Just when a lot of people thought that VeChain is cooked, well, apparently that doesn't seem to be the case. Did you know that the CEO of VeChain, who's Sunny Liu, recently was featured in a recent post when it comes to VeChain? Now, above what he said, they did say how the AI agents are coming to VeChain. So we have to consider this. VeChain is really having this emphasis when it comes to AI. Sure, it's focused on supply chain management, primarily speaking, historically, but we have to consider the strides they're making. And in today's video, I'll give more of my thoughts when it comes to this. However, I first want to clarify, nothing I say is financial advice, and I'm not telling anyone to do anything. Why, again, does this matter? Because the more and more VeChain is being more focused on AI, the more that it's posting about AI, the more that it's actually making updates and sort of, I guess, improvements towards that space, it does further strengthen and also bolster their sort of AI presence within this space, which I think is a net positive because they already have supply chain management in their back pocket, right? They already have that as one of the tools in their toolbox. We already know that. VeChain has been known for supply chain management for years. But now, that different tool right there, that right there is beginning to emerge as well. And that other tool, so to speak, is VeChain really being focused on AI. So yes, traditionally speaking, when we think about AI, we think about like BitTensor. We think about, let's say, in the case of the Near protocol, right? But sometimes we don't really think about something like VeChain. As evidently seen when it comes to Sunny Liu, the CEO of VeChain, talking about AI this many times, VeChain posting about AI so many times again, it does indicate that VeChain, they're really focused when it comes to that. They're all in when it comes to their focus in regard to AI. Really impressive in my opinion. And they have the infrastructure to do that though. I think that is something that sometimes people don't really consider because the VeChain Tor blockchain, I think it's a very fantastic place hypothetically for a lot of these AI developers. The reason why is because when it comes to AI, a lot of these developers seek reliability. They want something to be reliable and they want something to be pretty energy efficient. When it comes to the VeChain Tor blockchain, I do see some clues and hints when it comes to that, primarily seeing no network outages ever since the year 2018. And we're in 2026 as of right now. So let's just let that sink in. Basically, what, around 8 years, zero network outages. Other places have seen like 20, 30, 45 or whatever. We haven't seen that here. That's the thing. So when I take a look at this, again, I think as a place, is not so bad when it comes to AI projects. The infrastructure is there. Other projects out there, they don't have the infrastructure, but they're saying they're focused on AI. But my big question is, how can they handle that? That's the thing. How can they handle a 100-story building if the foundation is only for a 25-story building? That's the thing. If they don't have the foundation, how can they upgrade? That's what I'm thinking about. It's like, for instance, I see a lot of people out there, they modify their car and they focus so much on the engine. They focus so much on the horsepower and stuff like that. However, they don't really focus on the forged internals other than the engine. When it comes to, they don't care about the transmission. They don't care about, the suspension. They don't care about the brakes and all this. They're not caring about other aspects of the forged internals of the vehicle. So what happens, they modify this engine, becomes really powerful, but the supporting parts are not equipped to handle that added horsepower. That's the thing, right? What happens? Sometimes I see some of my friends, their car breaks down and stuff, it starts having issues, and who can they really blame? You know what I mean? They can't really blame anyone but themselves because they focused too much on the engine, but they didn't focus on the forged internals of the vehicle. That's the thing. So a lot of other projects out there say they're focused on AI, but they don't have the capacity or the fundamentals to allow for something like that to happen. So I question that. But when it comes to the VeChain Tor blockchain, it's already proven, it's already tested for many years. We already know that it's been able to be up and running without any network outages ever since 2018. So the infrastructure is there. It's smart of Sunny Liu to really have this emphasis in regard to AI when it comes to VeChain. It's like, for instance, buying an off-road vehicle but never going off-road. I mean, some people do that though, but it has the capacity, right? Because it's an off-road vehicle. When it comes to VeChain, they have the VeChain Tor blockchain. They can focus on AI if they want to. That's the thing. It's equipped to handle that, like what we've seen historically. So this is what I am a fan of when it comes to this. Now, of course, people like to tell me, wow, with all this going on though, why is which again, like I mentioned so many times in my previous videos, it is the primary native token of VeChain, but every time I mention that, sometimes people like to say, oh, what's that? But again, just in case, right? However, VET with a market cap of around almost 580 million, so still below 600 million. When it comes to that, people like to say, but yeah, why? Like VeChain's doing all this type of stuff. There's the Hayabusa upgrade, there's Stargate, there's also this really big push and emphasis towards AI recently. Why is it not doing the best? Well, because unlike a lot of companies in real life, let's say in the stock market, if they have good net income, if let's say they pay off their debts, if let's say they are launching something new, something revolutionary, sometimes we see it being affected when it comes to the stock price. But when it comes to this space, it doesn't really function in that way quite necessarily. It's like, for instance, if let's say VeChain in a random hypothetical make-believe scenario, this is not the case, but I'm saying in a random pure hypothetical, if VeChain was like, oh, we have a partnership with Justin Bieber, like even if they did that right now, it wouldn't do much just because the space doesn't have the change in market sentiment. If they launch something really impressive, like for instance, we take a look at the Hayabusa upgrade and Stargate, right? That is historically something very, very impressive when it comes to VeChain. That didn't do much when it comes to the price charts. That's the thing. It doesn't operate like, a company in the stock market, in my opinion. When it comes to this space, a lot of projects are very contingent on Bitcoin and the overall broader market sentiment changing. They just can't independently do things if the market isn't doing the best, because especially if they are not a microcap, it's very difficult to just go on a random run like that without the broader change in market sentiment. So it works a little bit differently, but I don't mind though, because if anything, what I'm seeing is a project improving, yet the charts are lower, which is kind of ridiculous, but I don't mind though. And I mean that in a good way, right? Because I find it pretty comical, I kind of find it a little bit funny that how projects usually become better during sometimes a market downturn, but the price is lower, it doesn't, appreciate, which is kind of, again, ridiculous, but in a good way. But I don't mind though, because if I'm dollar cost averaging, I'd like it better, preferably if it's lower. And this kind of feels like a throwback a little bit. It feels like I hopped inside a time machine, even though to my understanding, I've never seen one, a time machine, but yeah, besides that point, when it comes to VeChain, again, market cap, let's just say for simplicity's sake, it's like, 600 million, even though it isn't, it's like almost 580 million. If we take a look at it, did you know that even back in 2023, like one of the lowest points ever VeChain reached that year was around $1 billion in terms of market cap. We're almost 2 times lower than that. Keep in mind, $1 billion in terms of market cap at one point in 2023 was considered very bearish. Keep in mind, in 2022, again, even when the market cap was around $1 billion, that was considered bearish, and that was back in 2022. We're seeing right now levels that are lower than that. That's kind of ridiculous. As a matter of fact, if we take a look at, let's say, VeChain back in 2020, did you know that actually back in 2020, the market cap was kind of consistently hovering at around 700 million to around $1 billion? So we're lower than many points in 2020. That's kind of ridiculous. But we're seeing that, around 580 million market cap, around 600 million, I should say, for simplicity's sake. We're seeing that currently in 2026, whereas back in 2020, a 700, 800 million market cap, that was considered like really bad. That's kind of ridiculous, right? How we're lower than many points in 2020. Back in 2020, VeChain was not as relevant as it is right now. That's the thing. It didn't have the fundamental improvements that we see of today. And we're still lower than that. That showcases just how low we've gone, which is not necessarily, I think, such a negative thing, depending on how I take a look at it. Because if I'm looking to dollar cost average, then I don't mind things being low, because what happens if it recovers? Keep in mind, did you know that VeChain as of right now is almost 10 times lower than where it once was in December 2024? A little bit ridiculous, in my opinion. So if it just goes back to that, it already feels like an altcoin season. Even though December 2024 was not an altcoin season, it already feels like that to me because we're just this low. Had VeChain held up a lot better, like let's say at around a 3 billion or even just a 1 billion market cap, it would be a completely different story, right? But because we're this low, we're literally below 600 million in terms of market cap, it's to the point that if it could just recover to previous points, that would be considered really impressive. Keep in mind, if VeChain, right, just recovered to where it once was in March of 2023, again, March of 2023, which was not a good time at all when it comes to altcoins. If, let's say, VeChain just recovers to March of 2023 levels, guess what? We are currently over 3 times lower than that. Wow. Bitcoin going back to its all-time high, it's not even 2 times lower than that, though. That's the thing. Yet, if we go back to where we once were in March of 2023, we're over 3 times lower than that. Personally, for me, I haven't given up. I'm still waiting. When is the market going to recover? I don't know. Like, I can't control that. Like, I can't demand things to do this or that. But what I can do is control myself and stay patient, and that's what I'm going to do. But I'm not telling anyone to do anything. I dollar cost average once every approximately 30 days, and that's it. I don't do anything beyond that. But again, this is just my personal perspective. I am not telling anyone to do anything. However, I'll be sure to make more updates moving forward when it comes to VeChain. So I want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you all have a very nice day. It's Mali the Captain. I'm out. Peace. Bye.